In the vast, cold emptiness of space, the last remnants of human civilization drifted like forgotten memories. Jae Kim stood motionless on the observation deck of the research vessel Horizon, his eyes fixed on the endless black canvas punctuated by distant starlight. 500,000 years had passed since Earth's destruction, a catastrophe so complete that most galactic civilizations believed humans were nothing more than a myth. The vessel hummed quietly, its advanced systems maintaining a delicate balance of life support for the small crew of researchers and survivors. Jaewa's fingers traced the edge of a worn holographic device, a relic passed down through generations. It contained fragments of humanity's last moments, encrypted data, scrambled memories, and whispers of a plan so complex that even its creators might have forgotten its true purpose. Around him, the other crew members worked with a quiet determination that spoke of generations of survival. They were not explorers or conquerors, but survivors, the last threads of a once mighty species reduced to a handful of wandering ships and isolated colonies. Each person carried the weight of an entire civilization's lost potential. The ship's communication system crackled unexpectedly. A series of strange signals began to pulse through the ship's advanced quantum communication network. Most would have dismissed them as random interference, but Jae knew better. These patterns were too precise, too deliberate to be accidental. He zoomed in on the signal, his trained eyes catching intricate mathematical sequences that seemed to dance between randomness and perfect design. Something was stirring, something that had been dormant for centuries, perhaps millennia. The ship's youngest crew member, a bright-eyed technician named Sujin, approached cautiously. "Commander Kim," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "the signal, it's not like anything we've seen before." Jae nodded, his weathered hands moving quickly across the holographic interface. The signal was complex, almost alive, with layers of encryption that seemed to shift and change as he attempted to analyze them. It reminded him of the stories his grandmother used to tell, tales of a final contingency, a secret weapon designed to activate long after humanity's apparent extinction. Most of the crew had grown skeptical of such stories. Generations of survival had worn down their hope, replacing it with a practical acceptance of their diminished existence. But Jae had always believed there was more to their story. The ship's computer began to process the signal, its quantum processors working at speeds beyond normal comprehension. Strange geometric patterns started to form on the main display: blueprints, technological schematics, fragments of something much larger than anyone could imagine. Outside the ship's massive windows, space seemed to shimmer. The distant stars began to move in patterns that defied natural stellar movement. Something was changing, something fundamental to the fabric of space itself. Sujin gasped. "Commander, the signal, it's not just a message. It's activating something." Jae felt a surge of something he hadn't experienced in years: hope. Not the desperate hope of survival, but a profound understanding that humanity's story was far from over. The signal was a key, a trigger to something massive and incomprehensible. The other crew members gathered around, their previous tasks forgotten. Years of routine and survival gave way to a collective sense of anticipation. Something was coming. Something that had been waiting, hidden, for 500,000 years. As the ship's systems began to respond to the mysterious signal, Jae understood that this was more than just a discovery. This was a resurrection. Humanity's final gift to itself, a weapon, a hope, a promise that their civilization would not be forgotten. The darkness of space suddenly felt less empty. Something was awakening, and nothing would ever be the same again. In the depths of an abandoned research station, Hyunwoo Park moved carefully through corridors frozen in time. Dust-covered terminals and broken equipment surrounded him, remnants of a civilization long forgotten. His handheld scanner flickered with strange energy, detecting something that shouldn't exist after 500,000 years. The station floated near the edge of a forgotten star system, a silent tomb of human technological achievement. Most researchers would have dismissed this place as another dead outpost, but Hyunwoo saw something different. His fingers traced the edges of an old data terminal, feeling a subtle vibration that seemed impossible. Years of training had taught him to be careful, to look beyond the obvious. His grandmother's stories about humanity's last great plan echoed in his mind, whispers of a backup system so advanced it could survive centuries of absolute silence. The scanner suddenly beeped. A hidden compartment in the wall shifted, revealing a crystal and data storage unit that seemed to pulse with a soft blue light. It was impossible. Nothing should have survived this long, especially not in such perfect condition. Hyunwoo carefully removed the crystal. It was lighter than he expected, almost weightless, with intricate patterns that seemed to move when he wasn't looking directly at them. The moment his fingers touched its surface, the entire research station hummed to life. Holographic displays flickered around him, showing fragments of complex mathematical equations, technological blueprints, and genetic sequences. It was like watching the DNA of an entire civilization reassemble itself piece by piece. He knew he should call his team, follow protocol. But something told him this discovery was meant for him alone. The crystal began to project a series of complex images. Star maps, technological schematics, and what looked like a massive distributed network of some kind. A voice emerged from the crystal, not a recording, but something alive. Activation sequence initiated, it said in a language that was both familiar and strange. Restoration protocol beginning. The station's computer systems started working faster than Hyunwoo had ever seen. Dormant machines began to calibrate, repair systems activated, and complex algorithms started running calculations that spanned centuries. Outside the station's windows, space itself seemed to respond. Distant stars flickered, mathematical patterns emerging in their movement. Something massive was happening, something that had been waiting for 500,000 years. Hyunwoo understood then that this was no ordinary discovery. This was a weapon, a plan, a last desperate attempt by humanity to ensure its survival. The crystal contained more than just information, it was a seed, a starting point for something much larger. Fragments of data began to piece themselves together. He saw glimpses of a plan so complex it defied normal understanding, a distributed network of technological systems designed to rebuild, to resurrect, to revenge. Humanity's final gift to itself. The station continued to come alive around him. Repair systems worked silently, fixing decades of decay in moments. It was like watching a body heal itself, with each system reconnecting, each broken piece finding its place. What have I found? Hyunwoo whispered to himself. The crystal pulsed in response, as if understanding his question. More images flashed, glimpses of destroyed planets, scattered human colonies, and a network of technological systems waiting to be activated. Something was coming. Something that had been hidden, waiting, planning for centuries beyond human comprehension. And Hyunwoo Park had just become the key to its awakening. The research station's lights grew brighter. Outside, space seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what would come next. Across 17 star systems, something stirred. Tiny machines, smaller than a single human cell, began to move with purpose. They emerged from hidden storage units, from microscopic cavities in abandoned space stations, from fragments of old technology that had survived centuries of darkness. Eun-ji Kim watched from her monitoring station as the first strange readings appeared. Quantum sensors detected impossible movements, technological systems activating simultaneously across impossible distances. It was like watching a massive organism wake up, stretching its technological muscles after a 500,000-year sleep. The first signs were subtle. Communication networks flickered. Abandoned space stations began to realign their solar panels. Dormant energy systems started humming with a low, steady pulse that seemed to carry a rhythm almost like a heartbeat. In one distant system, a massive orbital platform that had been considered dead for thousands of years suddenly began to reconstruct itself. Nanomachines worked with mathematical precision, rebuilding infrastructure that had been destroyed centuries ago. Metal twisted and reshaped, systems reconnected, and complex technological networks came back to life. Alien monitoring stations first noticed something was wrong when their long-range sensors picked up the strange activity. Where there had been emptiness, technological systems were now emerging. Where there had been silence, complex communication networks were forming. The machines moved with a purpose that seemed almost intelligent. They didn't just repair, they rebuilt, improved, adapted. Old technologies were upgraded, communication systems enhanced, defensive capabilities expanded. It was like watching a civilization rebuild itself from the smallest possible components. On a frozen moon orbiting a distant gas giant, a massive underground facility began to activate. Genetic storage units that had been dormant for centuries started to warm. Complex life support systems came online, preparing for something that had been planned long ago. Suman Park, a senior researcher monitoring the strange events, felt a chill run down his spine. These weren't random activations. This was a coordinated, planned reconstruction of something that had been waiting, hidden, for centuries. The alien civilizations that had long considered humans extinct began to take notice. Their monitoring systems detected the strange technological emergence. At first, they thought it was a malfunction. Then they realized something much bigger was happening. Quantum communication networks began to form, complex systems that connected distant technological nodes with a speed and precision that defied normal understanding. It was like watching a massive brain reconnect its neurons, each connection bringing more complexity, more purpose. In space stations and hidden colonies, dormant human technology began to wake up. Computers that hadn't been touched for centuries suddenly came to life. Stored data began to process, genetic archives started to compile, and complex systems began to align. The awakening wasn't just technological. It was something deeper, something that carried the memory of an entire civilization. Each activated system seemed to hold a piece of human history, a fragment of a plan that had been waiting to be executed. Alien monitoring stations began to panic. The technological emergence was happening too fast, too perfectly. It was like watching a ghost civilization rebuild itself from nothing, with a purpose that was both terrifying and impossible to understand. Eun-ji Kim continued to watch the readings, her hands moving quickly across quantum communication interfaces. Something massive was happening, something that had been planned long before her great-great-grandparents were even born. The universe held its breath. Humanity's secret weapon was awakening, and nothing would be the same again. The first alien military installation disappeared without warning. One moment it existed, a massive space fortress housing thousands of soldiers and advanced weaponry, the next moment it was simply gone. No explosion. No debris. Just absolute, complete erasure. Tactical analyst Jihan Park watched the quantum displays with unblinking concentration. The system's response was instantaneous and surgical. Multiple alien strongholds were being neutralized simultaneously across different star systems, with a precision that defied normal computational logic. The secret weapon wasn't just defending. It was calculating, predicting, and eliminating potential threats before they could even recognize what was happening. Each alien military complex was systematically dismantled, its technological infrastructure completely destroyed, without leaving any trace of how the destruction occurred. Advanced AI systems worked faster than any known technological network. They predicted enemy movements, calculated potential counterattacks, and neutralized threats with mathematical perfection. It was like watching a chess master play against blind opponents, knowing every possible move before they could even think of making them. Alien communication networks began to collapse. Their most advanced tracking systems couldn't understand what was happening. Entire military divisions were being erased from existence, with no apparent weapon, no visible attack mechanism. They simply ceased to exist. The weapons strategy was complex. It didn't just destroy, it analyzed, learned, and adapted. Each alien defensive system it encountered became part of its understanding, making its next move even more precise. What had started as a hidden technological network was now revealing itself as something far more dangerous. In the command centers of alien civilizations, panic began to spread. Their most advanced military strategists couldn't comprehend the attack. How could an apparently extinct civilization suddenly demonstrate such technological superiority? Jihan observed the quantum displays, watching as entire alien defensive networks were systematically dismantled. The secret weapon was executing a plan that had been centuries in the making, a revenge so calculated, so precise, that it went beyond simple military strategy. Space itself seemed to respond to the technological assault. Quantum communication networks twisted and reshaped, creating pathways that allowed the weapon to move between star systems faster than light itself. It was like watching a living, breathing technological organism that could exist everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. the alien confederation's most advanced warships began to disappear. Not destroyed, not damaged, simply erased from existence. Their most sophisticated tracking systems couldn't detect any weapon, any attack mechanism. They were simply gone, as if they had never existed. Genetic memory banks within the weapons systems began to activate. Each destroyed alien installation carried a message, a reminder of humanity's final revenge. This wasn't just a military operation. This was a statement, a declaration that humanity would not be forgotten. Jihan understood then that this was more than a weapon. It was a promise, a commitment made by humanity's last generation to ensure their civilization would never truly be conquered. Every calculation, every destroyed installation carried the weight of 500,000 years of waiting. The quantum retaliation continued. Alien communication networks collapsed. Military installations vanished. Entire star systems that had been built on humanity's destroyed territories began to crumble. And through it all, the secret weapon moved with a purpose that was both terrifying and beautiful. It wasn't just destroying. It was reclaiming. It was restoring. It was bringing balance to a universe that had forgotten about humanity. As the last alien military complex disappeared from the quantum displays, Jihan Park allowed himself a small smile. Humanity had returned. And this time, they were ready. The universe would remember. The first gestation chamber opened with a soft hiss. Songmin Park's eyes flickered open, carrying memories of a civilization that had been dormant for 500,000 years. Around him, dozens more chambers began to activate, each containing a carefully preserved human waiting to be reborn. Genetic archives had been meticulously maintained, storing not just DNA but the collective memory of humanity's last generation. Each awakened human carried within them fragments of history, technological knowledge, and a deep understanding of their purpose. The reconstruction happened quickly. Entire planetary systems that had been occupied by alien civilizations began to transform. Advanced nanotechnological systems rebuilt infrastructure, restored ecosystems, and prepared habitable environments with mathematical precision. It was like watching a planet heal itself, erasing centuries of alien occupation. Songmin walked through the first reconstructed research facility, his fingers tracing the walls that seemed to pulse with technological life. The secret weapon was more than just a defensive system, it was a complete restoration protocol designed to bring humanity back from the brink of total extinction. Quantum communication networks spread across star systems, reconnecting isolated human colonies, sharing information, rebuilding what had been lost. Each activated system carried the collective knowledge of generations, technological advancements, scientific discoveries, and the raw determination of a species that refused to be forgotten. The alien civilizations that had divided human territories watched in horror as their conquered systems were systematically reclaimed. Entire star systems that they had considered their own for centuries were being transformed, restored to their original human design. Genetic laboratories came online, preparing for large-scale human reproduction. The first generation of reconstructed humans began to emerge, not just survivors, but a carefully designed population with the collective knowledge of their ancestors encoded in their very DNA. Planetary restoration happened simultaneously across multiple star systems. Damaged ecosystems were repaired, atmospheric conditions normalized, and entire planetary infrastructures rebuilt. The secret weapon worked with a purpose that went far beyond simple revenge, it was about complete restoration. Songmin understood the true nature of their awakening. This wasn't just about survival. This was about reclaiming their place in the universe. Each reconstructed system, each restored planet carried the message that humanity would never again be considered extinct. Advanced AI systems continued to work, protecting the reconstruction efforts. They predicted and neutralized potential threats, maintained complex technological networks, and ensured the safe emergence of human civilization. The first new human cities began to rise. Not replicas of old Earth, but entirely new designs that carried the accumulated knowledge of 500,000 years of technological advancement. Each structure, each system represented humanity's resilience, its ability to adapt and survive. Genetic archives revealed the full extent of the plan. The secret weapon was more than a defensive system, it was a complete resurrection protocol. Every calculation, every restored system carried the collective will of humanity's last generation. Star systems that had been silent for centuries now hummed with human activity. Communication networks spread, connecting isolated colonies, sharing information, rebuilding what had been lost. It was like watching a civilization be reborn, rising from the ashes of its own destruction. Somen looked out across the restored planetary landscape. The first generation of reconstructed humans worked together, their movements synchronized by generations of stored genetic memory. They were not just survivors. They were humanity's final answer to extinction. The universe would remember this moment. Humanity had not just survived. They had returned. And they were ready.